Go, 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 go.
3, 2, 1, 4 tires.
Still there, inside.
What a jump, what a jump.
The track is wet, it's good.
Still there, clear.
3, 2, 1. Green flag, green flag.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Four and Fuel podcast. I have not been able to say that for a while. It is now 2025, and we're back for a new season of the Four and Fuel podcast. I am your host, Dominic Capilupo, joined by my three co-hosts, Steve and Ray, Wesley Riddle, and Sam Dooley. Boys, we're back.
We're back. We haven't said it for a long time. I may have forgotten that this existed. No, I didn't actually. But we're back.
You got a couple of kids keeping you busy though, so it's understandable that you've forgotten about us a little bit. It is great to be back though. I've missed just talking some NASCAR with the boys.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, how much time has already passed, I feel like, since the last time all four of us were able to get together. It's definitely nice to be back and rolling for a new season.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're looking at, I think 2023, I think we really didn't do anything last year. Got busy. Steve had a kid, and he's got another one on the way. So, but we're not stopping this time. We're pushing through. And talk
With the kid coming in a couple months, I'll just have to tell the nurses, hey, you guys will have to take over from here. I got a little podcast with the boys that we got to get done. We got to put the race up on the TV in the delivery room. So we're really going to need to coordinate here. Maybe, hopefully, delivery day doesn't land on race day or anything, so we can still watch.
We can get a Four and Fuel on site in the delivery room.
Absolutely.
Pull the phone out.
Action.
Well, I don't know. We're still talking to officials if we're giving you a waiver if that does happen.
Do I get my playoff points?
Yeah, like your pick points, we might just put you back to 0 on race picks if you miss a episode or the race because of that. But anyways, we're not going to be too long today. Just wanted to get back into things, just a little season preview, talk about some new things that happened over the offseason, and give our Daytona 500 picks. I think first, before we get into the 500, let's just go right into our championship picks. I think, obviously we got until November to find out whether these are going to be right. But so we're not here forever. Don't give me your 16 drivers in the playoffs. Give me your championship 4 and your champion. And I'm going to start this one with Sam.
All right, I get to go first. Okay. Well, obviously last year was a great year for me. Got by the skin of Alex Bowman's weight problems and ended up making it to the championship 4 and overall winning it. It's an even year, but this year it is an odd year. I'd like to pull out the announcer's jinx again, kind of like I did. What was it last time that we were here, actually, in 23? I guess Denny Hamlin just because I knew it wouldn't happen, just to try and go against him there. But my 4 probably it'll be basic. It'll be kind of what you come to expect. I'm gonna go Blaney. I'm gonna go Reddick. I think Reddick has a good year. And then I'm going to put in those two are kind of obvious for me. Someone from Hendrick. I think, judging by last year, I want to go with Byron. And then my 4 will probably be, I'll go Larson with my 4. So I think there's 2 Hendrick. You got a Ford, you got a Toyota. I think it's going to be pretty competitive among everyone. My kind of hot take that I'm taking into this is that I think Bubba will build off of last season and probably make it at least to the round of 8. Like I'm looking at a round of 8 this year for Bubba. He's been steadily going up. You could see it. Each year he's getting a little better, and I think he's got the equipment with him. He's got the experience now, and I think he can make it to the round of 8 this year.
Now, who'd you have as the champion?
And my champion, thank you for asking. I'm gonna go with Reddick. I think it's Reddick's year. I thought last year was Reddick's year too. Like I thought Reddick was really underappreciated for most of the regular season. It felt like everyone was talking about the normal big dogs, and they weren't really including Tyler Reddick, even though he was up there. Like I couldn't probably tell you in at least in the regular season, uh, a time that I remember that Tyler Reddick was outside of the top 5 and not competing for like a legitimate shot at any type of racetrack, road course, super speedway, mile and a half, short track. He was up there all the time, and I think he's going to continue that into this year. And I think that he'll be able to pull it off this year.
Yeah, what threw me off about Tyler Reddick, though, come Phoenix, was they and the spring race last year, he led a lot of laps and was right up there the whole day. And then in the fall for the championship race, he was really nowhere in the top 5 all day. So definitely something to build on. It's going to be interesting to see. I mean, there's been no changes to the package. There might be a change to the tire for that race this year. Whether that helps them or not, I don't know. It's just it will be hard to beat Penske if they do get there. But that's just how I see things going. Let's go to Wes for your champ 4.
I haven't really had a whole lot of time to think about it, just because I really kind of got thrown off here in the off season. But I know that there are a few drivers that definitely. I mean, I feel like the parity this year. I feel like we've said it every year of the next gen, but the parity is about as big as it's ever been, and I feel like there's about 12 guys that could all make the final 4 pretty easily. You know, if the cards kind of fall their way. I think Ryan Blaney is definitely a must. The last 3 tracks are 3 arguably his best. I think we'll see him back and contend for the championship. So I've got Blaney. I've also got Kyle Larson. I think this will be another year where he's definitely probably the most dominant guy, but this time he actually gets into the Final 4, unlike last year when he probably should have been there. I've also got Tyler Reddick. I think Reddick will be back. I think that we're kind of waiting for the season where he emerges as the guy that becomes more of a dominant contender. I feel like we haven't really seen him go out there and dominate and win like he definitely can. So I've got Reddick, and then for a little bit of a upset, I think some would say, but I also don't think you can call it that. I think Chase Briscoe makes the Final 4. We saw him do it almost in 2022, driving for Stewart Haas. And I guess last year, I mean, he was exceeding expectations. We saw it at Darlington. Darlington's probably the hardest track any of the drivers go to. It's still one of the hardest tracks on the schedule. So I think this will be a breakout year for him. I don't think it'll be hard to do because he knows how to drive these cars. And we saw, him have a lot of speed in a car that really wasn't capable of keeping up with the pack. So I think Chase Briscoe is going to be dangerous this year. I think he'll knock off a few wins and get to the Final 4. If he gets in the Final 4, he could definitely win at Phoenix because his first career win came there. And I think he's got a couple other top 10s. But I do think Kyle Larson takes the championship this year. I think he gets back into, kind of winning form, but also championship form there in the final race. And I think we'll see him get a second championship.
All right, I like that. I like that.
Yeah, I was tempted. I think Ross Chastain's a guy to look out for this season. I think Trackhouse has a lot of momentum in their corner with Shane Van Gisbergen coming over. I think Justin Marks knows, and I'm not saying this because I'm wearing the hat, but he knows what he's doing. He expanding to a 3-car team can be risky for some teams, but for him, he knows what he's doing. He's one of the smartest guys, if not the smartest guy in the garage. And also, you've got Connor Zilic joining the team. You've got a lot of new partners joining on. But I think Ross Chastain had a little bit of an off year last year. I think he could be one of those guys that also has a chance to sneak in there. Then, of course, you've got a couple other Gibbs guys, a couple other Hendrick guys like a Byron or a Christopher Bell or a Denny Hamlin. But you just kind of have to see how the season plays out. And this year, I feel like is going to be another year where we see probably 16, 17, 18 different winners. It wouldn't be a shock. And there's a lot of guys that have a great chance to be able to make that Final 4.
Absolutely. All right, Steve.
All right. Well, I think there's definitely three guys that I'd put in as a lock for the Final Four. One being Ryan Blaney, because like Wes said, the round of 8, those 3 tracks are arguably Ryan Blaney's best tracks. So I think that, and especially when it comes to Phoenix too, it's one of his best tracks. So I'd put Ryan Blaney in. I'd put Kyle Larson in because he's the best driver in the field and is going to have a resurgence and have a dominant year, like I would say his championship year was. And then Christopher Bell, if he was lights out performance towards the back half of the year. And the tricky thing is, I think through the round of 12, I think if he can get through that, if he can get especially through like Talladega, he was on his way to win Vegas. He's won Homestead before. And I'm sure if he wins one of those races, he wouldn't have to worry about Martinsville, and he's great at Phoenix too. So I think those 3 guys, Larson, Bell, and Blaney, are a lock. I think my 4th guy, I do want to say Reddick, but I think there's going to be some kind of a mishap. I think it's going to be a toss-up between him and Chase Elliott when it comes to Martinsville. And with Chase Elliott, with Martinsville being one of his better tracks, I would put Chase Elliott in as the 4th guy, for especially after the dominating performance at the Clash. That was nice to see. But I don't think that he's going to come away with the championship. I'm actually going to say that Christopher Bell is going to finally check that box and be the champion this year.
You hacked my Google Doc, didn't you?
I did. Well, I'm looking at Dom's NASCAR picks.
He just took my championship 4 and my champion. He just took. I don't even have to talk.
It's all right. You can just say it. You piggyback off of me. So.
Yeah, I do have to correct you, Steve. Though you were talking about the round of 12 with Talladega. The Talladega is actually in the round of 8 this year.
Okay. Well, what has been historically in the round of 12?
Someone will go to the championship 4 because they won a plate race. Just let that sink in. They could.
Well, yeah. You have to look at. I mean, you're looking at the playoffs. Christopher Bell, it lines up perfectly for him. The round of 12, he could win any of the track, or round of 16, any of the tracks. Darlington, Gateway, Bristol. Then in the round of 12, you got New Hampshire. That's Christopher Bell's track. Mm-hmm. Christopher Bell is the best driver in the field at New Hampshire.
Just give him the trophy for New Hampshire already.
Yeah.
We don't even need to go race there.
Yeah, and then in the round of 8, if he wins Vegas like he probably should have last year and possibly the year before, you put him right to Phoenix, and realistically, he's had the fastest car at Phoenix last spring by a mile, and I'm sure he probably would have been he would have been more competitive for the win had he been in the championship, I think, this past fall. But yeah, Christopher Bell, it kind of lines up for him. Sam, what were you gonna? I cut you off before.
I was just saying, like, the fact that someone could win and get into the championship 4 based on a win at Talladega, as someone who is from Alabama, someone that's been going to Talladega for all 23 of my years, I don't know, man. Like, having that in there, I get that you want to have your wild card race in there. You want to, hey, let's shake things up, whatever. But I mean, like, there could be a guy that gets caught up in the big one. I mean, this is kind of an argument against Talladega in the playoffs in general, because I'm not a huge fan of it. I'm not a huge fan of the playoff system either. But just the wild card aspect of it being even later into the playoffs now is like, I mean, everywhere else you kind of have to be good at the track, and especially with this new car, this new package. Denny Hamlin said it this past week, and I've been seeing things about boomers really pissed off about him saying that Dale Earnhardt and Junior couldn't win in the current car, and I think it's true with the current rules package with the current car. I don't think they could, or at least not in the same ways that they did, because you can't really move this car around the same way that you have been in the past. So a lot of the skill has really been taken out of plate racing. So adding that in even later in the playoffs, I'm not like a huge fan of that. And that's coming from someone who, up until like 3 years ago, I had only seen plate races at Talladega. So.
Well, it's just barring calamity. This Sunday in the 500, barring calamity in the what we know is going to be a green-white checker. If you're not in the front 2 rows, barring calamity, you're not winning. It's just that's the state of super speedway racing right now. There's no making a third lane and it being competitive. The only time we're going to see 3 wide racing where it looks competitive is when they're saving fuel the first 2 stages and the beginning of the 3rd stage.
Yeah.
And then when they try to go all out after the final pit stop, it's just going to be 2 trains with no edge. And that's what it all comes down to. I actually have this season being like a 2018 season. I see this being like a big 3 type of year with the 3 guys you were talking about, Steve, your 3 locks. It was, Larson, Blaney, and Bell. I see them all winning at least 6 races each. I see it being a crazy season for Christopher Bell. I think Christopher Bell wins 9 races this year.
Whoa.
The bold take.
All right.
Yeah, I have him winning 9 races. I have Blaney winning 6. And I have Larson winning. No, I only have Larson winning 5. All right. So 3 guys have at least 5 wins. Another bold take I got. I don't know how bold it is, but I have Chris Buescher and Ty Gibbs both in the round of 8 this year.
I don't think that's unreal. I mean, you look at where Ty Gibbs has elevated over the past year. You look at how consistent Chris Buescher is, and a lot of drivers say it. Chris Buescher is one of the most underrated drivers still. He shouldn't even be considered underrated anymore because he wins every year. So I don't understand why he's not even put in the conversation of making a final 8 or even making a final 4. But I think that's a reasonable take, but I can see it. Ty Gibbs has to make a big step up, but I like that.
Yeah, if Chris Buescher was 3 inches further ahead at Kansas and him winning at Watkins Glen, he was going to be in the round of 12 last year. So him not making the playoffs, I think, didn't tell the whole story of how last year went for them. But yeah, I definitely, I don't think the Chris Buescher take is so unwild. The Ty Gibbs, it's still a toss-up in the air. I mean, this is his 3rd year in the Cup Series. We didn't see Larson or Elliott or Byron get their first win until their 3rd year. This is going to be pretty much the make or break year for Ty Gibbs. He's got to get something going. He made the playoffs last year, but out in the first round, he's got to make it past the first round to really be considered as any kind of top 10 type driver.
Well, you can get rid of Chris. You get rid of Chris Gale. That's definitely an improvement for
Give him
the
Denny
54
Hamlin
team.
instead.
And we'll transition over here to our off-season, preseason headlines that we're interested in. I guess we'll go back opposite order. So I'm going to start with Chris Gale. So how that affects Ty Gibbs and Denny Hamlin. I have Denny Hamlin going winless this year. I don't have him winning a race this year with Chris Gale on the top of the box. Chris Gale has had multiple years in the Cup Series. He's had multiple drivers and really has had little to no success on top of the box. And I don't know if you could say it's a talent problem behind the wheel, because you have Eric Jones, who, a lot of it was bad luck for Jones. We've documented that on this podcast before. And then he had Ty Gibbs. And I guess you can say Ty Gibbs was only in his first 2 years. And like you said, Steve, that 3rd year is that big year for, I think the magic number is like 100. 100 starts is when you should be getting your first win. And we'll see what happens this year. Denny Hamlin could also come out with just that, all right, like that Tom Brady Belichick attitude, like, all right, I didn't need the crew chief. I was the major reason why the 11 team was back on top. It just happened to be when Chris Gabehart came to the 11 team.
To be compared to Tom Brady, though, you have to have at least a championship, I think. So let's not get insane here. That's a little far fetched, but I get the analogy.
Yes,
I do have to
I don't.
say though, in Denny's defense, I mean, you look at the crew chiefs that he's had predominantly through his career. He had Mike Ford, Mike Wheeler. You had Darian Grubb in there at some point. You had Gabe Hart. I know that I'm missing some people in there, but it doesn't seem like no matter who the crew chief is, Denny Hamlin's still not to a championship level, but he still always rises, and it doesn't seem to change the way that Denny drives at all. No matter who's calling the shots, it just still missing a championship though.
Hey, I mean, I will say his best shot to win is the 500. The last two crew chiefs he's had, the first race with them in the 500, he went on to win. So if he's going to win anything, it's going to be the 500 this year. If he doesn't win that, then you might as well chalk him up for nothing.
Interesting.
All right, Steve, what's got you? What's piquing your interest going into the season?
Yeah, well, not maybe so much on the season level, but focusing more on the Daytona 500 is the Project 91 team with Helio Castroneves. I think it's a great opportunity to bring more of an outside worldwide or IndyCar type viewership over to NASCAR. I think that's something that has really been missing from the last 5 to 10 years of NASCAR. Is you kind of you need this outside attention. You're always going to have your core fans that are watching, but you need something to grasp this outside attention. And for this opportunity to come up, I think is great. The thing that I'm iffy about on is opening up this like weird provisional to where he's already guaranteed a spot in an open car. So he still technically is going to qualify and try to make it in. But if he doesn't, then they're just going to open up another spot and be a 41st car. That was really confusing at first, and now you've just opened up a complete gray area, because I forget the term that NASCAR used, but basically like a worldwide superstar is the gist of what they were using. And now you just have this complete gray area of, okay, are you worthy enough to be considered for that? And then if somebody, let's say wants to enter in at North Wilkesboro, or maybe that's a bad example for an all-star race, but let's say Coke 600, right? Are you going to open up a 41st spot, or are we just keeping this to the Daytona 500? So I think it's a great opportunity, but I also think that they shot themselves in the foot, because now you just have this complete like gray area of future things. What if Verstappen wants to come race at a road course? Are you going to open up a 41st spot for him? So that's my news. I hope that more opportunities or more people from outside of NASCAR are going to come give this a shot, and what better place at the Daytona 500. And I hope that Helio has a great race and is successful, and yeah. And then on top of that, the car isn't going for any points or any winnings. So he's just going to hang it all on the line and hopefully not cause the big one.
It's just such an unnecessary thing. I mean, there's nothing. They were going to enter Helio Castroneves in there regardless of whether this was a thing or not. Now, the way NASCAR introduced it was like, oh, we just added this random rule in the offseason to give it to them. Then we started backtracking and be like, no, it was in the charter agreement. It was just in there.
Yeah.
And then we start backtracking again. First, it's like, oh, world class superstar, and then it's like, oh, well, actually, no. If Truex and Jimmy Johnson would have applied for it, they would have been eligible too. So then what happens if you have multiple people filing for that thing? What are you supposed to do? How are you supposed to pick one?
I'm thinking other than the Daytona 500, this will be a non-topic, because where else do we have more than 40 cars trying to make the race. Like legitimately, it's the 500. We have a bunch of people that come in, and we actually have to send some people home, right? Outside of that, if someone wants to show up, I mean, I don't think there's many other places where we're getting a full 40-car field, which is kind of a sad narrative on the sport and how it is right now and how much money it takes, and we get on all that lawsuit stuff that they're doing, all of that. But this will be a non-topic outside of probably the Daytona 500, because I don't think we're going to have more than 40 people show up trying to race outside of this.
Yeah, it's just
the
something
500
nobody
is
asked
definitely the 500 is definitely where you're going to get the most eyeballs on it. You're not going to do some random Texas race. So you're right in that aspect, is that if they are going to do this, it's going to be your Super Bowl event, which is the Daytona 500. It's just just the way that it was done, and like Dom, what you said, it was just snuck into the charter agreement. So hypothetically, like Jimmy Johnson didn't apply for it, so your 7-time first ballot Hall of Famer driver could go home, but you're going to have an IndyCar driver come in and be guaranteed a spot. That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
It's from everything that we're hearing through. I'm going to go back to the legal processes, right? Everything we're hearing through their lawsuit. That's just kind of how NASCAR operates. They just throw stuff in those agreements, and they give you till the end of the day to sign it, or you can't race next year, right? So I'm not really shocked that this is kind of a gray area, because NASCAR, they throw stuff in to these things. They're kind of shady in how they do stuff anyways. So we're not really that I'm not really that surprised that this wasn't really fully thought through when it was thrown in, and that it was thrown in really under the noses of a lot of people.
All right, Wes.
Well, there's a few different things. I feel like, gosh, they made so many rule changes in the offseason. You could talk about how, the damaged vehicle policy is going to be different, which is definitely nice. We're going to have the opportunity to see cars actually have a chance. It'll just be one to be able to get their car fixed and put back on the track. Better team dynamic there. I feel like when cars just had 5 minutes and then they were thrown in the garage, you're not giving the crews opportunity to work to fix a car that could go back on track and make up 10, 15 spots at a restrictor plate, say that Daytona or Talladega, or, just a few from a big wreck, right? That's why they're there, right? They want to be able to fix their cars. They want to get back on the track. So the update that's going to be definitely nice for the new season. I think they also mentioned and I don't really know a lot of the technicalities, but if a driver does get suspended by NASCAR for intentionally wrecking somebody, they're going to lose all of their playoff points. That's going to be a big incentive for how they're going to treat each other on the racetrack, right? You might get two guys, your driver A gets into driver B, and then driver B knows the policy, so driver B is going to get into driver A, try to irritate him, right, or something of that nature, to where driver A then tries to have to restrain themselves from retaliate. So that'll be an interesting dynamic to see how drivers do treat each other on the track, because I feel like now a lot of drivers they get bumped once and then they try to go for an intentional spin. Not really the driver etiquette, it's changed a lot over the years for sure. And you hear a lot of veteran drivers and even current drivers, that have been around the sport for a while, like Logano or Keselowski or Hamlin, talk about that. So there's that. And then I'm trying to remember the other one that was pretty big. There was a third one. I can't remember what it is. Maybe I'll come back to it. But I think the one thing for me that I was most excited about is just seeing the new kind of dynamic, the new faces and new places. I think the Cup Series has an immense amount of talent, and probably the highest level talent across the entire full-time roster that we've ever seen. Or maybe not in the talent sense, but at least in the resume sense. I feel like every driver brings something to the table. as you look all the way through the board. But it'll be different seeing so many teams with so much different structure to their driver lineup. I feel like Spire and Front Row are the two biggest. I think that both of those teams could really excel this year, and we might see more than one or multiple drivers from both camps find themselves in a playoff spot if they're able to, get a win their direction. And it's not out of the equation. I mean, we saw like for Front Row, Zane Smith have a really good second half of the year. Todd Gillen gets better every single year. And Noah Gregson had speed that, we saw glimpses of it in a team shutting down, right? So I think those three are going to be guys to watch with Front Row. And then you look at Spire, you got Justin Haley that shows up some weeks and looks like he actually might be able to win, like Darlington a couple times. He had top 5 speed the entire race. Michael McDowell, a lot of high expectation from him. Is it going to be a step up? I mean, Spire's making a lot of moves. So we'll just have to kind of see how the season plays out as a whole. And I forgot to mention Carson Hocevar, probably some of the best rookie speed we've seen from a rookie in a long time, right? For a guy that really didn't have the best, opportunities seat-wise for being able to step up and, contend in the top 5 or 10. Obviously, he didn't do that, but when you heard, his name mentioned on the broadcast, it was always him moving forward. So a lot of team dynamic changes in the Cup Series. I won't talk about it, but I know in Xfinity, there's 8 drivers fighting for Rookie of the Year. That's going to be something exciting to watch. 8 drivers that are all pretty skilled, right? I mean, you get a little bit of spread from a guy like Connor Zilic down to Dean Thompson. Nothing against Dean Thompson, but, moments of his Truck Series career, we see him have great speed. But obviously 8 drivers in Xfinity fighting for Rookie of the Year. That's probably the best Rookie of the Year class maybe in NASCAR history. I mean, I know it's insane to say, but all 8 of those guys could be in the Cup Series if there were seats. So it'll be exciting to watch Xfinity this year and trucks as well. But the Cup dynamics definitely going to be a little bit different with all these different ride changes.
I mean,
I think looking at the two teams that you highlighted right there, Spire and Front Row, the thing that I see in common with both of those, absent of Michael McDowell, is the youth. There's a lot of youth there, and there's a lot of potential for speed. And I think that they're kind of embracing the youth movement as it comes up, because there's a lot of really talented guys down there, and you can kind of get them for cheap because, like you were talking about, there's just not enough seats, right? So if you're a Spire, you're a Front Row, you're one of those mid-major, if you want to call them, they're kind of middle of the pack guys. You can get these guys like Hocevar and these guys that have been really good through the lower series, and they can help develop your program, and they can kind of grow with you as they come up. So like absent of Michael McDowell and those 2 teams, I see a couple of teams that have guys that are young and hungry, and it's cool to see that those teams are really embracing, like, hey, let's develop these guys and try and develop our program with them.
I want to add this too. I don't feel like we've ever seen a team, and I say this because the 2 I mentioned and what you just talked about, Sam. For the first time ever, I feel like we're going to see Front Row Motorsports have 3 friends driving on the same team. 3 friends. And then you've got a team like Spire, right, where they all have a different dynamic and they're all at different spots in their career, right? So seeing 2 fully new teams pretty much in a sense of rebrand, I guess. One that doesn't have any kind of connection with each other, Inspire, right, with Chevrolet, and then 3 friends driving for the same team that grew up racing together, that have a great relationship in the 4 camp. How the dynamic, how it changes through the course of the year, but also just, their overall performance and just how they interact with each other on a weekly basis. So that'll be something to watch too. I don't feel like anybody's, at least that I've heard, has talked about that, but it'll be exciting to see, right? Looking forward to it for sure.
Yeah, I mean, you brought up that Xfinity Rookie of the Year battle. Are you trying to discount the Cup Rookie of the Year battle this year? I think we got us a doozy. Riley Herbst and Shane Van Gisbergen. I don't know, man. I think Riley Herbst, you got to take Riley in that one.
SVG on a lock.
I think Riley's car number is pretty close to world finishing points. So
I don't know. I think Denny Hamlin's a man that knows talent when he sees it, and I think he's got a good one in Riley Herbst.
He knows money when he sees it, and he'll take it all day.
All right, Sam. What are you looking forward to here?
Wes hit on some good things, like the rule changes to the playoff eligibility and stuff like that. I think that's great because, like he was talking about, the driver etiquette has gone down the toilet, and it's to the point where now NASCAR's had to step in, and I don't think there's ever really a time in NASCAR history where they've really had to step in and try and like fix this. Like, hey, quit wrecking each other. That has a lot to do with the car and the fact that you can't pass half the time, anyways. But um, that's its whole other thing. What I really want to highlight is SVG going into this year. Um, so he got his year of seat time in Xfinity. He learned how to turn left. He did. I mean, he did well in that car. Everyone kind of knew he was coming up into the Cup Series. That was just a foregone conclusion. But looking forward at this season, I think he's got some great opportunities with that with that team because he looks so good. He looked so good last year. Like you could like see him beginning of the year to the end of the year how much he had figured out on ovals. Kind of a foreign subject to him. And I think he'll continue to learn. I'm not expecting him to come out of the gate and like win the Daytona 500, right? But I think he'll come out and he'll be competitive. He kind of understands it. He's got a couple of starts under his belt. I got to see him win with my own two eyes at Sonoma, which was fun in the Xfinity race. So he dog walked everyone in that one. So it was. I've got high hopes for him. I think looking forward with that Trackhouse group, like he's plugging into a group that is a top of the line team. Like they've solidified themselves as they are playoff contenders. So he'll have the car. It'll be interesting to see just like the growth as he comes through because this is only his second year of even competing on ovals and like how, Xfinity's like completely different than Cup. The Cup car just in general is a completely different car. But just kind of understanding ovals and everything, like I'm looking forward just to seeing. Maybe I'm not putting like, hey, he'll make the playoffs in this year or anything, but I think that watching his progression from beginning of the year to the end of the year will be a really fun thing and a really fun storyline to follow, because I feel like he's just been soaking everything up like a sponge, and I can see him being a legitimate contender close to the end of the year.
It was impressive seeing SVG last year in the Xfinity Series. It seemed like in stages 1 and 2, he ran probably around 20th, 25th, but then by that third stage, he was running top 15 right in that back half, top 10 at some races, and on legitimate speed, not because of strategy, not, just a lucky restart. He was racing up there, and I think at the beginning of the season, it's going to be rough on the ovals. He's going to be outside the top 20 probably, but as the season goes on and as these races go on, we could see SVG competing inside the top 20 on a regular basis. And if you get that by the end of this year, who knows what he could do next year. If he becomes a legit threat on ovals, he could, I wouldn't put it past the guy to be a true playoff contender, not a guy that gets in on a road course win and is a first round exit every year.
I was there too. Just the fact with SVG and Trackhouse, that's a lot different than what we saw with Marcus Ambrose. And I'm not, not trying to compare them, but obviously they come from, they have very similar backgrounds. But it's not the same as Marcus Ambrose and Richard Petty Motorsports. Or you look at Juan Pablo Montoya and Chip Ganassi Racing, which Chip at one point was a dynasty, right? But in the years Juan Pablo was there, they were just kind of an average team, right? They didn't really excel. And then obviously, that team kind of went downhill over the years, especially after he left, right? So, but where SVG is with Trackhouse, I mean, Trackhouse, we don't talk about them being the peak team or like an A-level team when you look at Hendrick Motorsports, Joe Gibbs, right? But they can be there they're looking to be there, and and I feel like we just see them get better and better as time goes. So SVG definitely, he has an opportunity. He'll have time to grow. I don't think that he's going to be a driver that gets kicked to the curb, right, if he has a couple bad years. It seems like this is going to be a longevity career, being able to stay there and maintain it as long as he's able to keep showing improvement. And I'm pretty sure he will.
I think that one of the most important things that he did last year that showed to me that he has potential in NASCAR is the fact that he took care of his stuff. I can't remember like maybe a handful of DNFs, and most of the time it wasn't his fault. Like he didn't blow his stuff up. He didn't drive the wheels off of it, which is a really easy thing to do when you're not used to NASCAR, not used to ovals. But he took care of his stuff last year when in his Xfinity starts and his Cup starts, and that is like rule number one, especially if you want to keep your job, is to not keep costing your owner a bunch of money. So I think that he's got some really good potential going into this year and forward.
No, absolutely. So some great things to look forward to and keeping our eyes peeled for in 2025. Before we get out of here, let's make our Daytona 500 picks. Just gonna go a random order. I'm gonna let Wes go first. And for this season, when you pick a person, you cannot pick that driver again until the playoffs. So just keep that in mind when you're making your picks this season. So, Wes, you get to make the first pick of the year, first race pick of the year, the 67th running of the Daytona 500.
I don't know what I did to deserve it, because every time I was in school, Wes, that's like at the bottom of the alphabet. There were hardly anybody after RI. So once it's nice to be at the top for something. No, I didn't really put a lot of thought into it, and this is the first race of the year. There's just so many wild cards. Anything can play out. I'm going to pick the guy that hasn't finished, I don't think, worse than 17th at Daytona. I'm taking Cody Ware. He had honestly, he didn't race all of last season. He had a pretty decent year for the races he ran, for not being in the seat all that long. And then he knows to stay, he'll stay in the back of Daytona, but obviously he makes his way through the wrecks. We don't hear him causing wrecks. He just kind of keeps a level head and just gets good finishes. So Cody Ware.
All right. You know what? Let's just do the backwards alphabetical order. So, Steve, you're up next.
All right. Well, I'm with Wes on the wild card picks. I think this guy is either going to cause the wreck or avoid all the wrecks. One of the Spire cars, but it might not be who you think. I'm actually going to go Carson Hocevar. I think it's going to be one of those where everybody wrecks off of turn 4, and he's just going to weave his way through and somehow win. He might have caused the wreck, but he'll find his way through, and Carson Hocevar will win the 500.
All right, Sam.
Man, I'm looking at this entry list right now. There's some heavy hitters in here. Even just the one-off guys, like I could see like a one of the one-off guys pulling up too. But I'm gonna go with the Spire Motorsports card that you are thinking of. I'm gonna go with Michael McDowell as my first pick, just because obviously he's got the resume to prove it. He's a really good restrictor plate driver, and it was pick him either here or at a road course. And I don't know what Spire's road course package is going to look like this year. So I know that pure drafting skill wise and with this car, Michael McDowell is usually up there at the front. So I'm picking Michael McDowell.
He might be the guy causing that wreck too off turn 4 with that block. All right, I've talked about him a couple times this episode. I think it's his time to really shine. It's Riley Herbst is going to win the Daytona 500, bringing 2311 Michael Jordan into Daytona 500 victory lane.
You're just tanking for that first pick next week. That's exactly what you're doing.
With help from team owner Denny Hamlin. It's going to push his protege, Riley Herbst.
Is this going to be shades of like
Daytona 500
Dale
champion.
Earnhardt Incorporated? Where Denny's going to start blocking for the 2311 cars?
Boy, I hope not.
Hey, he just might.
You remember how that race ended, right?
Yeah.
All right, before we get too deep down into the weeds here, we got to stop the episode, but that's our first episode of the season. Hope you guys enjoyed it. We will be back on a weekly basis. We're going to figure out dates and the days of the week that we're going to get the podcast up every week for you guys to enjoy, and a potential live episode down the road. We'll release more information as we know more as that gets there. But thanks you guys for tuning in, and we hope for a good season on the podcast and in NASCAR in real life. So with that, we will talk to you after the Daytona 500.